I moved to Portland as a newlywed in 1969, and how did I had been here the summer before and I was a dance major in college, so the summer before was right the year before I graduated. I graduated a little early, and I had looked for a place to take dance, and the only place I found with modern dance was the Park Bureau with Marjorie Church, which was at the Firehouse Theater that's now the acting academy place. And Marjorie Church was like, I don't know, some kind of old Graham dancer, and she was adorable. She was like old at the time I met her, and gave classes like you could walk in because the class was the same every single time.
Wow.
I know, it was just like, and it was kind of deadly. And I used to say, oh, I'm getting married and I'm moving to the armpit of the arts because there's nothing here. There really was, at that point, Graham came like every other year and then stopped, and occasional ballet concert. There really wasn't a lot at that time. I think it was just a break in things. And I happened one day when I was back, I was dancing with, had made a friend in class, and she said, oh, they're having a dance concert at Portland State. Do you want to go? And in my arrogance, I said, sure, why not? So I go to this dance concert, and it was great. And it was like, whoa, something is going on here. And it was an improvisational concert at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, in that concert, Bonnie was performing in it, Bonnie Merrill, Jan Dreyer, Pat Emmel at the time, Penelope, I remember Penelope's name, and Kathy Evelson was the head of the department.
Wow.
Vonda Carter had walked out, I think fairly recently,
Okay.
who was the head of the department at that time. And I walked up and introduced myself to Kathy, and that was kind of my first interaction with the group. That became Portland Dance Theater.
Uh-huh.
So I went, I think I hadn't had Chris yet. So I kind of went and had the baby and stuff, and in the meeting, they all looked at each other and said, we're paying money to take classes here when really what we want to do is work together.
Mm-hmm.
So they started to work together.
Wow.
And I guess they did another improvisational concert with some kinetic sculptures that I went to after the birth of my child, and I went up again and introduced myself, and we kind of had a conversation. And one day the phone rang, and they went, hi, Pat Emmel is choreographing this dance that we're going to do with the Junior Symphony, and she needs a body. Would you come and be, her body? And I said, well, sure, I wasn't doing anything, great. So, and I think they were rehearsing at the time in like church gymnasiums.
Oh, wow.
At that point. And so I went and became Pat's body for this piece, and about 3 months later they looked at me and said, well, I guess you're a member of the company now. And I went, okay.
Kind of taken into the fold.
Yes. And it was great because none of us had a clue of how to make a dance company, so we made it exactly the way we wanted it.
Aha. Wow.
And then Hillside Center developed. And it was up on Culpeper Terrace, Northwest. Actually, only the gym exists any longer. It was the old Catlin Gable School.
Okay.
So it was a series of these wonderful old buildings. And the one on the end, it had been like the gymnasium lunchroom with the stage at one end, mm-hmm. and it had an entry area and a little kind of changing area, and then a small studio. So that's what we took over, and we taught classes there, and we would pay ourselves 50% and give 50% back to the company.
Okay.
To make it run. And that place, it was the first like cooking school that started Portland appreciating like what good food was. This crazy chef taught. Half of the good artists in Portland were there. It was just this amazing collaboration. It was like this, it was the 70s. We were all kind of in feminism, we were like, we're going to do what we want to do and be women, we can make our own way. And we made the company, we would every morning start with a class, and I think we started at 9 because Bonnie had to get her kids to school, and we ended at 3:30 so she could go and get the kids. Yeah. It was fabulous. And we would perform on that little stage, and we were choreographing like 2 to 3 minute pieces, and we would wear like 3 or 4 layers of leotards, and we would run off this little stage and rip off a set of leotards and run back onto the next 3 minute piece. was hilarious.
That's great.
But it was great because, and then Oregon Art Commission had just began at that time, and I think we got the first dance grant, and we got it to buy a reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Oh, wow.
It was this big honking thing, you know, that we could play music on, and we used to have to splice and make our concert tapes. It was just, and it just went from there.
Wow.
Kathy taught at Portland State.
Okay.
And so she would identify good talent. She would come in and she'd say, "Ah," and that's how, so there's this guy in my jazz class, and you got to come see him. He's going to perform in this thing, and I think we want to pull him in. And so we went to this funny concert at Portland State, and it was in what's now Smith Ballroom. We used that a lot, Smith Ballroom. We would dance wherever we could find a space, and so did everybody at Portland State. And they were doing, was it he was a wolf. I think they did some version of Little Red Riding Hood. I think at that time, Marini Ray was teaching at Portland State with Kathy, and Greg was being supported in a cage on these really rickety poles, and it was like, whoa. And who was it? Was it Annie? Somebody was a fish, and it was just hilarious. But we went, yes, and that's how we found Greg. I can't remember how we found Charles. He might have stumbled into classes or something, and Annie Bruner. And that became kind of the core Portland dance theater at the time. And we got West Staff touring, Western States touring grants. They used to help companies tour. And we went to some places that had never seen dance before, and it was fabulous. I mean, it was just, the whole group was so fun. They were such great people, and we had such a good time together. And we kind of co-directed at that time, and everybody could have a chance to choreograph if they wanted to. So really, that's how we built it. And we did young audience at the time. You would audition, and they would, if you got on the roster, you know, schools could hire you.
Right.
And we did, like, there are some years when we did like over 100 young audience concerts, but that's how we made money.
Right.
You know, it was fabulous. It was just, we had to get up early. Greg hated getting up early. We had to dance on Smash Peas in the gym. You know, it's just, but you get,
but you
really
pay the bills.
you pay the bills, and you perform all the time, which is, you don't do that I mean, you couldn't even, you know, people, when we did big concerts, like, we would perform a piece 3 times and you never saw it again because we were on to the next thing, you know. But
seeing children excited about dance,
it was just, there were times when just teary-eyed. Like, I remember once there was this little kid, and we would teach little master classes and things, and a little kid sitting under the piano one time, and Charles was great. He ended up doing a lot of work with kids in the schools, and the teachers came up afterwards and they went, "Oh my goodness, he's never spoken before. He's never laughed," you know, and he was just great. Wow. And then we toured, as a young audiences, we toured Springfield, outside of Eugene, and we walked in to do the concert, and there was a bunch of children lined up against the wall, and we went, "Well, who are they?" And they were so sad, and they went, "They can't go there. They were Amish, and they aren't allowed to see dance, so they couldn't go to the concert." And it was just, and then they wouldn't let us perform in Springfield. We couldn't perform in Springfield once. They had to pay, and they canceled the concert because our leotards and tights, you could see the women's and the men's hoo-has, and they were not going to have any of that.
That's amazing.
It was. We couldn't believe it. But
cool. I was talking with Greg a couple of days ago. I'm just going to check and make sure that everything still looks good here. Yeah, we're good. And he was telling me about the space at the Catlin Gable School, and about just what that was like, and how that was this collective of, like you were saying, like all these different, like he was like, there's a woodworker there,
and woodworkers and visual artists, and I mean, it was just fabulous. That's great. And then, let's see, so we moved.
Can we go back in time a little bit?
Sure.
So Vonda Carter was here before you.
Right.
And did you ever get a chance to meet her, or did you just
hear of her? I have met her. No, I have met Vonda. Yeah. She's actually back somewhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's around here somewhere.
Oh, I would love to track her down.
Yeah. Who knows? Shoot. Because she went to church with somebody. I'll look and see if I have contact. I might have lost along the way.
Sure. I'll follow up with you.
I ran into someone that said she goes to my church. But she came back and started working for Nike, I think.
Oh.
but that would be interesting. I don't know if she'd even talk about it. It's a very, I don't even know if I should. She was married, and she fell in love with another woman, and just one day she just walked out. Like, she didn't quit or tell anybody, she just left.
Wow.
And Kathy was there, the only one in the department to kind of pull the pieces together, kind of. And Vonda, dang. I think, was right after, I don't know, Vonda might have been the first. Kathy, you should talk to Kathy. Kathy was hysterical. She was in the Peace Corps, and she was traveling up the West Coast deciding what she wanted to do. And Kathy is one of the most unique people I've ever met, a real original. And she came to Portland to stop for a couple days and just never left.
Wow.
I know. So she was here, and I think Kathy's one of the first. She studied with Alvin Ailey.
Okay.
And I think she's one of the first people that taught jazz in American universities.
Wow.
I mean, she was really a jazz person. She started in modern, and she could do modern, but she didn't like it very well. I think she could even do ballet. She was raised in like Red Bluff, like Northern California, in a farming community. Her whole family's hilarious. Her sister's brilliant. She's a brilliant linguist.
Wow.
And they folk danced.
So
she grew up dancing and running around in the fields and, just having a great time. And she just fell in love with jazz and married a jazz musician and just, she was really amazing. And then, I shouldn't tell you, but Kathy, so she was at Portland State. And Kathy decided at a point, she had a sabbatical and she got money to go. Her first trip, I think, was Bahia, Brazil.
Oh, wow.
And she fell in love with Carnival and the diaspora. I mean, she was always, her husband's black, so she was always kind of about equality and diversity and that. And she came back, we laughed, she came back, and all she did was the samba for we were going, please take another trip and learn another dance. And she did all these huge projects. She would make all the costumes herself.
Oh,
she used every sheet in her house, and she made all these skirts, and she taught, and she brought back her costume. She danced in Carnival in this little bikini and grass skirt with the big heads. I mean, she's outrageous. She taught herself Portuguese.
Wow.
And drumming to go study. And she ended up studying in Cuba and Haiti. And then she started taking students on field trips. And Kayla Scrivener actually ended up getting a job in Jamaica for about, 2 or 3 years and danced with their national company out of these field trips.
Okay.
So she's a whole story of her own, but just really incredible.
Did Kathy and Vonda start the program here? Or
I think
do you know
so. I think Vonda did.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that, but I think Vonda did. And for years, it was just what they call a dance certificate at the time, which was like 2 courses shy of a major. But a certificate was sort of a meaningless thing.
Right.
But we had classes of like 90 students. Like Kathy would be in the small gym in what's now the Stott Center, and you could look down the window and here's this P. She used to have to stand on a table to demonstrate because it was a sea of people. I know. Everybody loved Kathy. And then she went to Brazil, and she brought back the first capoeira master, who's still here teaching. So started the whole capoeira thing.
Do you know who that is?
I don't remember.
That's
Kayla
all right.
will know.
Okay.
And Kayla studied capoeira, and she's just amazing. She's great. She's the technical director now in Lincoln Hall. She runs Lincoln Hall here.
I know Kayla.
Yes.
And how did your involvement start here at the university?
So Portland Dance Theater was great. We brought in choreographers. We decided we couldn't afford to all go to New York, and so we would decide who we wanted and we would bring them. And the first artist we brought was Phyllis Lamhut from the Nicolai Company. And that was a huge, I just fell in love with the technique, the whole sense of you can use your mind, to indicate what you want any audience to see. It was just brilliant to me. And then I went off, traveled back, I think, to visit my parents and started taking Cunningham classes with Margie Jenkins in San Francisco, and then went back to New York at a point and studied a little bit at the Cunningham studio. One of my college friends ended up teaching at the Cunningham studio, and so visited her, and she got me into Cunningham. And so the combination for me of Cunningham and this Nicolai mentality was just it. And I started teaching the company classes, to really share that information. So we taught each other. we choreographed, we toured, we had Phyllis Lamahut, we had Don Rudlick, we had Dan Wagner, we had Stancy Peterson from San Francisco, we had, we would write, we'd say, oh, who do we want to do a project with, and we'd write them. Mm-hmm. So we wrote Fellini, and we wrote Lolita. We were crazy. I mean, it was a great group.
Digging through this makes so much more sense now. Digging through the archives, I saw a letter to Fellini.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was a kind rejection to say I can't come out now and work with you, but thanks for asking. Yeah. And I was like, what's going on?
We would do multimedia things all the time. We worked with Hank Pander. He did sets for us. We worked with David, I can't remember, he did Blue Up sets. So at one project, at the point that I'm leaving, which was not a good situation, I had read Another Roadside Attraction by Tom Robbins, and it just blew me away. And we wrote Tom, and he said, okay. So we had this project, and Marilyn Taylor had been a company manager for a while and became a really good friend. She's a wonderful actress and director. She lives at Cannon Beach and part-time here now, and still does work at Cannon Beach. She's a wonderful theater person, and she performed in some of my later works at the time. But Marilyn is the cousin of Gordon Muma. So we wrote Gordon. And Marilyn said, well, let's see if Gordon wants to do it. So there was a project with Tom Robbins, Gordon Muma, and David did the sets. I can visualize, I can remember his name. And I helped write the grant. Jan and I were kind of co-directing by that time. Okay. Pat had left. She went to Reed. Kathy said, I can't do this anymore. Portland State's getting mad, split. So she left, and she really wanted to pursue jazz, and we didn't. Mm-hmm. So, and we got new, there's always new people filtering through the company at the time. So Jan got mad at me because I got pregnant again. And said, you can't be an artist and be, a mother, there's a hole in you or something. It was just awful. So they threw me out of the company. And I had gotten an NEA grant to do a concert at that point. And I did a concert. By that point, we're at the Contact Center, which is now some other building. It's on the corner of, it's like right near where the old Civic Theater, do you know the old Civic Theater? Kind of right around the Multnomah Club, kind of towards downtown, that big brick building. We were on the third floor, and it was this, you've seen it in tapes. If you saw any of the tapes of like rehearsals in this big thing with big windows, that's the Contact Center.
That helps so much because, so many of those things I watch, but I'm like,
are they?
Like, okay, this is a room with big windows.
Yeah. Where's that? That was the Contact Center, and I don't know what's in there now because they sold it and we lost that space. And the family circus was below us, which was a hysterical group. And at the same time, what was his name? Oh, grab it. The crazy guy. It'll come. He was in theater, Storefront Theater. They were kind of connected to them, and we knew Storefront. So lots of wacky group, and there was PCBA, which folded, in Northwest Artists Workshop. There was all these wonderful things that kind of no longer exist, that kind of we had connections and brought really new work. We were always being fed really new, and everything was like in innovation and invention.
Cool. And this is with your own independent work, or with Portland Dance Theater? Got it.
So then I leave, and I do this concert at the Contact Center, my own work, all my own work, the first time. That's what I wanted to do, a concert, because we'd always shared. Right. And Jan and I had started co-choreographing things. And we did a piece that, there's no tape of it, it was called The Dance in the Room, and it was to Bach. And it was Lawrence Smith was director of the Portland Symphony at the time, and we danced with that, and we did it here, and we did it in Seattle, in Bumbershoot, I think, or something. Okay, cool. And the stage was half of a room and half was dance space. And the room had a bed and a rocking chair and a lamp. It was just great. Love that piece. But okay, so I'm thrown out, and I do this concert at the Contact Center, and I thought, well, that's it. I don't, dance is over I don't know what to do, And May of that year, the phone rang, and Nancy Manchuk called, and she said, gee, I'm looking for someone to teach advanced modern technique. Would you be interested? And I thought, oh, sure would. And I think Bonnie had been kind of teaching and doing some work at Bonnie left for Boston for a year and came back and didn't join the company again. And she had started doing independent work and stuff, and it was teaching a bit and choreographing at Portland State and had a strong connection. I think she recommended me. And so I taught one, just the advance, and I had taught for a year at, I drove up every Friday to Olympia to teach at Evergreen.
Oh.
And I taught classes all day long, and I drove home because I'd met this crazy guy taught ballet there, and we had danced there. We performed. Jan and Greg and I did what we called the trio tour to try to get business. We went up the coast, and we danced at Evergreen, and we danced at Southern Pacific Lutheran, I think, and we danced at UW, and we danced in Vancouver and at Simon Fraser. So we had met people, and we wanted me. So I had some college teaching. When I first came here, I taught at Catlin Gable for a year. I taught dance there too. I think Jan had the job, didn't want to do it anymore, and gave it to me. So I started at Portland State, and a year later, I guess Nancy had been fighting for a new position. Was it tenure track at the time? I don't know if it was, but the position opened, and I applied for it and got it. And at that time, I had just a BA in dance.
Oh, wow.
A minor in theater. And the dean of we were in health and physical education at the time, and he said, well, you'll never get promoted. And it was a full-time job with benefits, with a salary like mega, it was tiny when you think about it, but for me it was huge. And he says, I don't care.
You're like, I just got promoted by getting this job.
Yes, this is a miracle, never mind. So I got a full-time job.
Wow.
At Portland State. So, it was Nancy Manchek was great. So Kathy was there. Kathy and Nancy Manchek and I were full-time. And then we always had part-time people like teaching jazz and ballet and other things. And along the way, Nancy and I were going, we started a group, an in-house, what we called a semi-professional company called The Company We Keep. And Terry danced in it, and her sister Sandy, and Bonnie Nedrow, and Sarah Grindle, and everybody, all our good students danced in it. Really great. And we decided we wanted to elevate the notion of it, and we thought, well, what's the best way to do it? And we said, we'll start a dance series, and we'll put ourselves on it, and we'll dance at the level of professional companies, and that will help the profile of the company. And that's how the contemporary dance season started. So we started having a contemporary dance season at Portland State that brought in about 4 or 5 companies a year from all over the world, and did a half-week or a week-long residency and shared it with the community. It was just amazing. We had everybody. It was just a miraculous thing, and the students all got to meet them and take master classes, and we still didn't have a major. This is all with this certificate program. We moved at a point to the School of Fine and Performing Arts. Portland State did that, pulled, and class was furious because they pulled art and music and theater and dance and made this new school. And art did not want to move, did not want to come out of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences.
Oh, interesting.
And so it was big, but they did it. And then we moved to Shattuck. So we were in the HPE. We had one, we called it the submarine. No, that was Shattuck. We had one big office. We never saw the light of day. There were no windows in Stott.
So down in the basement.
It didn't matter where you were. There were no windows except in the front. So you'd walk in at 7 o'clock in the morning and leave at 5 at night in the winter, and you never saw the light of day.
Oh.
And we had one studio, and we performed in it. We did concerts in it. We did everything in this one. It's still there. It's 207.
Oh, if you have time, could we walk by that on the way? That would be lovely to kind of pinpoint that place on campus.
They use it now for the dance team and ballroom dances. They run kind of dance activities out of there. We never can get in there again, but we lived in there. We had curtains we would set up. We did our own lights. And then at a point when
this is for the company we keep.
Yeah. And all the student choreography concerts, comp things, anything we did, and we did everything. It was huge. We were always doing concerts and demonstrations, and the students were all involved, and it was great.
Cool.
Then we got the space, Shattuck 212. It breaks my heart. I can hardly go in there. We moved. They cut the School of health and physical education at one of the budget cuts. And we were in fine and performing arts by that time. And we moved to Shattuck, and we raised money to get a sprung wood floor in there. And it was, again, like Shattuck used to be an elementary school. And so the studio was really the gymnasium and the theater. So there was a stage at one end, big room, and we had one office in the corner. And we called that the submarine because literally we had dividers that you stood up, you could look over. And the first divider had our adjuncts, and there were like 3 or 4 desks. And the second divider was Kathy and me and half-timer Vest Dolinar for a while. And then the back divider was Nancy, the head of the program. And then there was an open area with a table where we would meet and a little desk at the door with our secretary. And that was it. That was the whole department. And you'd walk across the hall and there was a little changing room. The faculty had their own little changing room, and there was a student changing room, and the men had to go in this dorky little teeny room. But we had this big, beautiful studio. And then we had 207 too. So finally we had 2 studios where we could teach, and they were going full bore all the time. And the company would rehearse, I don't know, at least 3 days a week, like 1 to 3. We taught all morning, and then we would and we all, still, the faculty all could choreograph if they wanted. Kathy was now doing her own thing. She was doing her carnival and doing parades and doing these whole out, kind of things all about her South American dance samba, and you know, she went into con ballet, which that's great. So, and the company we keep actually got was quite good. And we again we collaborated with Hank Pander. We collaborated with, I can't remember my name. He's really, oh God, I forget his name. He made some of the greatest sets he's kind of a neon artist around. He's a great artist. It'll come, or maybe not.
For the company we keep, was that a student dancers with faculty choreographers, or was it like faculty?
Yes, and the faculty dance too.
The faculty dance.
It was really combined.
Okay, wow. And because Portland Dance Theater had overlap with dancers that also taught at Portland State, so there were some dancers that danced with Portland Dance Theater.
Portland Dance Theater.
Help me kind of pull these companies apart a little.
Kathy went to Portland State. Bonnie went to Portland State. Bonnie was actually one of the directors of the company we keep for a while too. So originally, the company we keep was me, Kathy, and Bonnie and Nancy, and we all choreographed, and we all danced in it sometimes. Though Nancy quit dancing, I think first. Kathy decided she didn't want to do that thing; she was going to do her own thing, and so it became Bonnie, me, and Nancy choreographed quite a bit. So, meanwhile, Portland Dance Theater, I leave, and Jan was a very strong personality. She just always was, and just had very. Her aesthetic was. She made the most beautiful work, and it was all encompassing. She would design the sets. She would design and make the costumes, and her works created worlds. Wow. And she wanted, the minute somebody walked in, she wanted certain music playing. She wanted to look a certain way. The whole studio, and there were always we liked some people's choreography, we didn't like other people's choreography, and at that point the company became, because Charles left, and he started doing his own independent work and touring a lot and doing work in young audiences or somebody with a lot in the schools. Greg went to Amsterdam. Right. He had been gone, and so at that point it was Hillary, Carl Rowe, who we had auditioned with Biggs Moscow when I got pregnant. We auditioned and it was always a struggle to keep and find men, and they were really good. But Biggs had left. So Carl was there, Greg was there, Charles was still there. Actually, Charles was still there with Earhart, and for a while, Hillary, Jan, and Ann Bruner.
And about what year was this? I mean, roughly, we don't have to pinpoint
77, 78. I went to Portland State in 78. I got my full-time position in 79. Okay. There came a time when Jan said, all right, I can't do this anymore. You can have Portland Dance Theater, or I'm going to take it. And and I wasn't around at the time, so this is just what I've been told, and nobody wanted it. So Jan there was kind of a transitional work. She did the women's piece, which was like, it must have been like, there could have been 50 women in it, and there's tapes of it. And Robert had started dancing, her husband, Robert Rikers, and Joan was dancing with her, and Claire, who's back now, I hear. Claire was in the company at that time, and Linda Turnbull, who Jan did beautiful work on Linda. So she transitioned it into Cirque. That's when it became Cirque, and it was still at the Contact Center. But Jan had took over by that time. It was her company, it had her signature. I think Carl and Hillary moved to Boise, and they danced there for a while. Now he's a visual artist, so I don't know how that happened, but they're still in Boise. Charles left and did his own work. Greg had left, and Greg and Jan commissioned work, like a duet we had worked with, come on, Douglas.
Okay.
Douglas. He danced with Cunningham.
Dunn?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Douglas Dunn. He had come several times.
Okay.
And had been kind of close friends.
Wow.
With us, and he did a duet. This is the time Douglas made his own transitions, but there was a time when Douglas said, I went into dance so I didn't have to deal with emotions. And he didn't.
Wow.
He was like, and he's so funny. He's so great. He makes the greatest work. He's still making work. I just adore him. But he came and made this duet that was just like, the counts were like, your finger likes this, and it's 1 and a 3, and like really detailed. And they just, and Jan and Greg were not that kind of dancer really at all.
Right.
And I don't think they ever performed it. I think at that point, I think Jan performed it as a solo.
Okay, wow.
At some point. And then Douglas changed. He transitioned and started doing this wacky kind of character-based, in a way, work, and kind of dealt with his issues. He was marvelous, actually.
Wow. So just to kind of help me understand.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But no. This is perfect, and this is your story, and that's what I want to really be able to record. But it's so Portland Dance Theater was really a collective. There wasn't a person at the helm. It was people.
Not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning.
There were the 4 women.
Got it.
They directed it.
And then somewhere along the line, Jan said,
Well, it became Jan and I co-directed.
Okay, got it.
Then I left, and Jan was kind of working in a collective way again with the group.
Okay.
And it was not working for her.
Got it.
And so along the way, about the time, I can't remember time, so they did Earhart, that's the Tom Robbins and Gordon Muma piece, in like, I was pregnant with Zach when I saw it, and he was born in 77.
Okay.
So it was right around 77. And then the next year I went to Portland State. So I'm not quite sure when Portland Dance Theater ended and Cirque began.
I've got
but
those
it was
dates
in there.
somewhere in there. And
Yeah.
it sounds like the reason why Portland Dance Theater and Cirque began is because Jan was saying, we're back in this collective, I need to make a definitive break to say I'm the director.
Yeah.
And therefore we're going to have while some of the same people are involved, the company is going to be...
She pretty much
started.
Yeah,
okay,
she started a new company. She didn't keep the same people.
Wow.
Cirque was not the same people.
Okay, so the idea of the collective...
transitional time, they were the same people.
Got it, that makes sense. And then like you were saying, like people like just kind of went in their own way. Like Greg went to Amsterdam. And, Okay, that makes so much more sense, because looking at this on a sheet of paper, like looking at the dates, I'm like, why did that happen? Why did Portland Dance Theater end and Cirque begin? But I see now.
Yeah.
And the company we keep was all PSU
Right.
faculty, PSU students.
Right.
What was I think it's a brilliant choice, but who came up with the idea about having faculty and students dance together, like in the same piece? Because that's
what we wanted to do.
Which is, and it's unusual. I don't think I've seen that
We had
before.
great students. I mean, you've seen Carrie Mather dance. And her twin
Min,
sister.
and Sandy, yeah.
Min. I mean, like, Bonnie Nedrow and Sarah, they were great. And there's other people. It was actually quite big at times. We just had really good students, and we wanted to keep working. You know, and the brilliant thing about being in a university, you know, both ways, is you don't have to ask money for people to, you know, pay for their classes, which is always horrible.
Right.
You know, dancers never want to deal with money, so it's horrible when you have to say you owe money for your class. I mean, it's just horrible.
Yeah.
And you have a space and you have equipment. You don't have to rent a theater because you're in-house and you have the theater. We had to pay technical costs, if
Right.
but it was like doable.
Yeah, so much more minimal.
And you could, I shouldn't say this anyway. So a lot of what makes dance so hard to do when your house and your university is taken care of. And you have a continual influx of students that you can train. I mean, choreographers want to train people who can do their work. That's how technique comes about. You figure out how you want people to move to be able to do your vision, and you have to teach them how to do it. So it's perfect.
Right.
And you're being paid.
Yeah, so you don't have to be a barista after you do this. You're just doing it.
It is the best. I couldn't believe it when I filmed this Nirvana, and I loved those people. I came out of this group of people that were like really fun and really challenging and really would do anything. We would try anything.
Wow.
It was great. Into another group of people who were about the same. Again, they would get these ideas, and we'd go, okay, and we'd make it happen. I mean, it was amazing. There's CETA years in there too. It didn't last very long, but there was this national, you could apply and become CETA funded. It was like this, and you actually could get paid for doing art, and we get $700 a month, which was huge for us at the time.
Sure.
And we thought, oh my gosh, for doing what we were doing. It didn't last very long. It was sort of like the WPA.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, oh my goodness, this is like a miracle. It's just great.
Very cool.
And there were great things going. I mean, there's a lot of experimental work and wonderful work going on in Portland at the time. It was really a fun time.
Cool. And so with the company we keep, did the company rotate as the students would graduate and new students would come in?
Except sometimes we wouldn't let them go, so they became the adjuncts.
Aha!
So Terry and Bonnie teach. I know Sarah taught. Sarah, we made her teach ballet, which she was good at, but it wasn't her love. But Sarah taught ballet. We brought Greg in at a point, but that was towards the end of the program. We always had a ballet teacher, because Nancy taught ballet, and the more she got into administration, the less she taught. So we had to cover that, because she was really the ballet person. Kathy was the jazz person. I was the modern person. But we had more than I could cover for a full load, because I also taught choreography and comp and improv and production. We taught dance production.
Wow.
And then the production class would do the tech work for the choreography class.
Nice.
Which was great. And you learned a lot. I mean, you actually had to learn about lighting and how it works and do the work and sound, and we taught all kinds of stuff. So we were kind of a functioning unit. It was perfect. But we never worried about the students were so good. We just didn't worry about it.
Yeah, you felt like they were at that level that it wasn't going to look weird to have a faculty member and a student dancing
eventually
together.
it got all the way. As time went on, and Nancy stopped dancing, and Bonnie left, and I was the only one left, it got I'm really much older than these people.
Right,
and
and also if you're the only one, it's kind of, there's not the context,
exactly,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So there was a point we brought in, anyway, the company we keep blew up. They kind of decided they wanted their own company, and they kind of threw me out. It was a big explosion. We don't like to talk about it very much, but they threw me out, and I went to Nancy and I went, I don't know, but, and she said, well, you're the full-time faculty member. It's your position. Do you want a company? And I said yes. And that's when Judy Patton and Company was born. Was how to meet in the university, and I did work with Ursula Le Guin. And probably it was still functioning as a dance season, and they thought they were going to have the company, and it was a bad time.
Oh,
really
so
bad
did the company
time.
we keep continue?
Died.
No, it died.
We had become, so when everybody left, and it was just me and Terry and Sue Brantley. Min, I think, was kind of around. Then he left for
And they were functioning as adjuncts at the time, so
yeah.
So
Sue wasn't
faculty,
so much.
but got it.
But I think Terry was at the time.
And
they met these guys that were a band, and we decided that was a really good idea to have your own musicians. And so the company we keep became this group of musicians and this group of dancers. Who was in it? Well, Min was around for part of that. Min was in for part of that. Sue, Terry, Sarah and Bonnie were still there. They were in it. Tammy Gray, who had been in a long time, and she taught jazz. She came along and we brought her into adjunct. And for a couple of years we worked with the Panda Brothers. We worked with so that, and then it blew up, completely blew up.
Who, after you left, was there somebody that assumed the leadership role in the company we keep? Or
the company we died.
Oh, okay.
Just died. It was gone.
Wow.
And
Got
I said, and they called me up and said, it's so terrible. We're going to do it. We're going to do it on our own. I said, great.
Yeah, good luck.
More power to, I hope you do. You know, they were furious. I was furious. It was horrible.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
horrible. And that's when I started dancing with Kayla and Cynthia Chimienti and Sophie Frost. And there was very small.
Through the Judy Patton dance company?
Yeah.
All right.
And they were students at the time, and some not. I did several works with groups of students, some independent dancers and some not. We did one year I got a grant for $250 from what was RAC now. It was
Metro,
yeah. And and it was Kayla and Chris Rukudarin and Cynthia and me. I think that was all it was at the time. And I thought, well, I could give it back, or like, well, I still want to do something. So what can you do for $250? You know, and they, you know, we never got paid anyway. So we did a series of gallery performances. And they were improvisational based on the artwork in the gallery at the time, though we had chunks of things to build off of.
Is this some footage that Joan has?
Yeah, she could. Well, I don't know if she has any of that. I have it. I don't think Joan has it. And we did, what did we did? We did the Jameson Gallery. We did Laura Rousseau, who was so nervous, and it was she had a Michael Rousseau work at the time.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God, it was hilarious. And we did Meryl Hurst, and we collaborated with that wonderful bassist. Like every time we would do a different kind of group of things, and we always had to lug the chairs in, drive them. Oh, it was just, but it was fun. We had a really good time. So the $250 paid for like promotion and doing a little bit for the dancers, and we did a whole series of concerts.
Wow.
That way.
Dang.
It was fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I want to backtrack just a little bit. With Portland Dance Theater, you listed off a pretty impressive list of guest choreographers that came in. I was thinking in the back of my mind that some of the viewers might not recognize all of those names of the film, and it would be wonderful if in your own words you could kind of recap who those people were and the companies they're associated with, or just not necessarily all of them, but maybe just some of the ones.
Well, Phyllis had a tremendous, and we're still in contact with Phyllis. She still teaches. She's a firecracker, but she was from the Nikolai Company. I just spit on you. I'm sorry. And she started dancing at the Henry Street Playhouse when she was 14 years old. And then when she left the Nikolai Company, she did a lot of the original Nikolai work. I mean, like, if you go back, you'll see. And she was one of the most glorious dancers I've ever seen. Ever. Magic. And she's so funny and so sarcastic and such a dry wit. She's an amazing human being. So that was Phyllis, Nikolai, and then she did her own work, and then she's always taught like at NYU or around New York, and she had her own company for years, and she's kind of an icon in New York, you know, because of her. She's very literate. She's very articulate about dance, and she came here at Portland State. Portland State used to have a summer dance workshop, and Emery Hermans did one, and I did that one, and Kathy did that one. And Emery was from Nikolai also, and he was crazy, he was loony. He danced with a snake. I mean, he was just nuts. And Joan Gedney and Piglet, only Piglet's not her name. They danced with Phyllis, and they were here. They're still here. They live here now. So that was kind of old. It was before they redid Lincoln Hall, and it was Old Main. We danced there with Emery, and then they liked Emery, so somehow they got Phyllis from Nikolai, and she came the next year. So we did an intensive with Phyllis, and then Bonnie and I loved her so much we would follow her around. Like if she was doing a workshop or something up in Simon Fraser, we would go.
Wow!
So we really got her, and then Portland Dance Theater. That's how we hired her. She was the first guest artist. And we used to do events. Just nuts. So. There's pictures of this too. We would do events, and we would meet them at the airport. And with Phyllis, she got off the plane, and I was in a dragon costume, this huge foam rubber thing, and Craig was in a chicken costume, and he was sitting in the waiting room with his briefcase. Just so there'd just be these, as she got off the plane there, and you could do that at the time because we didn't have all this Homeland Security. And Jan was in a little fur coat, and she was skiing down the walkways and things, and there was a purple cow talking on the telephone, and I think Bonnie met her and guided her through this, so you can, and then the purple cow said, I think this call is for you. And so we would do these meeting events, and and Dan Wagner's was great because we drove them around and they went all over the city, and some of the things that happened were not us. Like one time they stopped at a stoplight and the whole company walked through the back seat to cross the street.
And this was your way to greet Dan Wagner into Portland.
Yes.
Sweet. And was Dan associated with which company?
Dan danced with Paul Taylor and maybe Martha Graham, and then started his own company. And he was just a wonderful choreographer, a wonderful dancer, and just dancing with Dan Wagner was like dancing with heaven. Like, he cared so much, and he took such care of you as a partner. It was like amazing. And he put a dance he had, taxi dances. Taxi dances, dime a dance, but it was really sophisticated, wonderful music. And he choreographed it in the contact center, and we performed it. And I was dancing, like his company was bigger or something, so I had like 2 different parts. And so we were, and we performed it in the Reed Gymnasium. Not in the studio, but in the gymnasium. And they set the thing, I think they were like, it was like 5 or 10 feet wider than we had been, and it was like non-stop dance. And I used to be able to exit and then catch my breath and enter. Well, it was so much wider that you didn't get to catch your breath. You just exited and you had to come back on in your next part.
Oh, jeez.
And Charles had really hard parts. And he was dying. It was really hot summer with Reed. That experience was like, I don't know how we made it. I really don't, because it was like, kill me now.
Wow.
But it was a wonderful dance, dance, and he was just brilliant. There used to be a thing you probably heard about called Quake.
Yeah.
And it was every summer, and you could apply, and we performed at Quake a lot. One time we were doing one of Bonnie's dances, and it was in a tent on what's now Pioneer Courthouse Square, which was a parking lot. So they'd put big tents up there, and you'd perform in the tents, and her music started playing, and we worked with Tom Svoboda too, and I think it was one of his pieces, and it started playing, and we started the dance, and about 12 seconds later it started again, and it was playing. The music was playing twice
on top of itself,
but not quite in sync. And so you'd hear your cue to enter, and you'd hear your cue to enter again. And I don't know why she didn't. She was in the audience, and she was going crazy. And this was a big bunch of, she must have done it at Portland State, because it was like Patty Benson was in it, and Terry was in it, and Sarah, a bunch of us were in it. It was a big piece. And I got to laughing. So Terry was looking at me like, what do we do? I was in hysterics. And at a point, everybody just stopped dancing and left Patty Benson out there by herself for hours. I mean, it was just, and Bonnie, if you have your wits about, you should have said, excuse me, we have to stop and start over, But nobody did. They let the thing go on. Oh, it was just a mess.
Wow.
Lots of stories like that. Oh, my God.
I've heard about something where there were like tumbleweeds in
She did a
Quake.
piece. She did. That was Bonnie's piece.
Got it. Okay.
And she has a film of that, and it's beautiful. She's done a lot of beautiful work independently. Mm-hmm. She worked on Mary Oslin's company. She worked on OBT. She did her own independent projects, and she does big things. She takes on like big things, and it's beautiful. But she had to go find. She was always like, "Oh, Donald McHale came to Portland State for the company we keep, and the first time he came, he put a duet on Sandy and Terry, because of course it's fascinating to see two people. I mean, when they first came here, we couldn't tell them apart, and they didn't like that. They would get really mad if we called them the wrong name, and decided like they looked exactly alike. Now they don't at all.
Yeah.
They grew out of it completely, but it's like at the time it was like their bodies were the same, and they moved the same. It was like, okay. And they were really snippy. They were very cute. It was and really good dancers. So he came and did this wonderful duet on them, and then we had him come back, and he did this huge piece based on nature. And so he went with Daryl Clegg, and Bonnie always hosted. She would get all involved in these things, and they went to take pictures of nature in Oregon that were slides on the back, these gorgeous things. Bonnie did a solo about the ocean, and his wife at the time was a glorious costume designer. She made all the costumes, and they were like just amazing. So there was the flowers section. They all had these beautiful flower costumes, and I was in a trio with Kathy and think of her name. And it was kind of a flamenco thing, and we had these kind of lace and satin flamenco kind of pantsuit outfits, and
wow.
They made us wear false eyelashes. Like they were from, Donald has done Broadway, so they do things big, and it was like we weren't used to, we were like no makeup, blue jeans.
Sure.
So it was very different for us. But but they went all over and took photographs to make these slides. And then he came to Jefferson a couple times. He did games. So Donald is a close friend too.
Cool.
And walking around with Donald is like walking around with a modern dance history book. It's just like, just keep talking, just keep telling us stories.
Did Donald do any work with Portland Dance Theater?
No,
or just Company We Keep?
Company We Keep. Yeah,
Got
he
it.
was with Portland State. He taught. And
it sounds like there were some choreographers that worked with Company We Keep that then were also hired by Portland Dance Theater.
We had kind of an ongoing relationship with B.B. Miller. And she did a piece on, at the time, it was the choreography class. Wonderful work based on, she did a work of, it was Stairway to Heaven.
Okay.
It was the, I forget what the project, God, I loved it. No. Pink Floyd.
Oh, right. Yeah. What am I thinking?
Yeah. She did just some great work. And her company performed here several times on the season, and she taught, and she did some work here. She's, again, a fabulous person.
Yeah.
Who else did we? Nancy was very supportive of Stephen Petronio, and has done a lot of work to keep him functioning. And we had Cunningham Company a couple times.
Right.
We had people from England. Oh my God.
And so this is all part of the contemporary dance season that happened here.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I see so much interconnection, like between the faculty here, the dancers and choreographers of Portland Dance Theater, the contemporary dance season here, the choreographers for the Company We Keep. Like it's at that time it feels like this, like a series of Venn diagrams where this intersects with this and this intersects with that and this overlaps these two things.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a lot, and at that point, so many people, we would open our advanced class, and, we encouraged local dancers to come, so there was a lot of intermingling, and there was a lot of, like, almost everybody who was doing dance in Portland at the time had been trained here or had some kind of connection here. Linda K. Johnson did not. She came in new. Mary Osland never taught here. But our dancers danced for her. Like Terry danced for her, and I think Sarah and Bonnie, maybe Sarah, maybe somebody else. So there was a lot of intermixing going on. There was also the whole, I can't remember his name. Portland Dance Theater, I mean, at a point, Jan knows more because it was after. She was taken to court because this horrible man. What was the name of his company? He was a Judy Massey protege. So he started with a modern company. It was really boring, and then ballet seemed like it was being more, and he became a ballet company.
Yeah, Bill.
No.
I know Keith Martin.
Keith Martin, yes.
Yeah.
Keith Martin. He wrecked dance for a while in Portland. It was awful because everybody thought, oh, this is modern dance. It's terrible. I'm never going again. And he took grants and he lied, and he was just awful. Should probably put this on the tape, but it made it really hard. And Portland dancer Jan ended up they said, we had been paying contract laborers, and they said they aren't, so she owed all this money, and she lost all the equipment. This happened during the transition as well. And because she was the only one left, and I didn't even know it was happening. But, I mean, she was always bitter about that. So she had to pay a ton of money.
To Keith Martin?
Yeah, to the courts, because Keith turned her in.
Oh.
And said, no, if you have so many people, we paid our tech people. We didn't have anybody on salary, really.
Right. So it was kind of this informal agreement that we'd all work for...
Well, we didn't even know, really.
Right. Yeah. You're just I'm showing up and dancing.
Yeah.
And then he's like, this is an organization, there's rules, you're breaking the rules.
Right.
Ooh.
And it was
That's dirty.
Oh,
wow.
awful. He sells used cards now, and I laugh because that was what he always seemed like. Yeah, so that kind of made it hard because of the competition, and it wasn't good. It didn't like a lot of times more dance is better if it's good dance because you see one group and go, I want to see the other group.
Right.
But when it's sometimes it doesn't. That was not a good time period.
And so this was then getting close to the close of the department, the dance department.
No, that was more Portland Dance Theater stuff. The dance department. So the dance department. We got fine and performing arts. We're doing great, and all of a sudden, Measure 5 hits. It was in 1989 or 90, around in there, and there was this huge thing about budget cutting the universities. We went through, and the dance department at this point is flourishing. And we finally got a major. University of Oregon never wanted Portland State to have a major. The faculty there always thought that if we had a major, they wouldn't get any students, which is stupid. And then most of them wanted to take over the department so they could move to Portland.
Oh.
Okay, so they fought. It got so ridiculous that their provost had to apologize for things they were saying because they were like crazy. Right. So finally, we get the dance major. We have it for 2 years. We've been fighting for 10 to get a major.
Yeah.
We get the major 2 years later. Measure 5 hits, and they're going to cut the dance department. They said, you don't have very many majors. It's like, of course not.
We started 2 years ago.
We only got a major 2 years, and you don't want a whole lot of dance majors because
it's going to flood everything.
So in 1992, and now Nancy was a brilliant politician, and brilliant. And she really had lost interest in the dance department and really liked a contemporary dance season. And she took a sabbat. She knew what was happening. And we also had a protector in upper administration for a long time, Margaret Dobson. And she helped dance exist, and she protected every time something was coming down. She would kind of be there. Well, she retired, and Nancy kind of saw that. She's very smart. She took a sabbatical, and she went and worked with San Francisco Performances. And at the same time, Nancy is you're going to have to cut this. She's actually having an affair with the provost at the time, and they got caught, and everybody got mad. And she
the provost here?
Yeah.
Which is why she said, I gotta get out of town.
Yes, and he did too. And they're married. Now they're married.
Okay, wow.
Actually, Frank Martino. Yeah. But, and it's actually pretty funny. Not so much. So she was out of town, and the dean at the time, who was Wilma Sheridan, who was sort of like a little librarian. I mean, she was just really straight musician. And she called Kathy and I in, and she said, Nancy is not going to be chair of the department anymore. And, anyway, and Nancy she built this whole program in this contemporary dance. I mean, like, it was worldwide known. I mean, people would come here to test their work out because Chris Herrick was the TD, and he loved figuring out problems for the dance. He was this kind of character. He was bad in a lot of ways and good in a lot of ways, but they would come to have Chris figure out their problems with their sets and lighting and sound so that they would then it was amazing. We had everybody. We had Sankai Juku a couple times. We had Blue Lips, this kind of transvestite performer from England. We had Wim van der Kiebus. You name it. We had them. I mean, we had who's the crazy punk ballerina? She was awful. We had Petronio. We had them. Well, is
that the punk ballerina that you're thinking of? They had one.
Carol Armitage.
Okay.
Oh, she was great. She was really nice.
Cool.
You can't believe how sweet she was.
Aww.
They came to. We didn't have them on the series. They were in Civic Auditorium. I loved them. Oh my gosh, they were spectacular. We had this great collaborative group from San Francisco that was. We have from it was amazing. And she built this thing, and then they said, you can't do it. And she was fried. And at the same time, they were about to cut. So they called us in. So Nancy took the sabbatical, came back. Then they called us in. We went through a whole series. They had hearings. We made our arguments. They were going into this. University studies was just being developed. Those were the years when it was just coming to be, and they were talking about community connections. Like, there was no one more connected to the community than the dance program,
right.
Doing things in the community, the performances, everything. And they cut the dance department. They called us in 1992, and they said, we'll give you 2 years to get your majors through, and then the program's done. And it turned out they wanted the legislature to feel the cuts. They didn't, and the dance department was kind of the right amount of money. We were doing amazing things with so little, you can't even believe it. And they didn't think the community would scream all that much. And they were right. And Nancy left. She went on sabbatical. She came back. She worked out a deal. They did a tenure buyout. It was called tenure relinquishment. And for every year you were tenured, they paid you a certain amount of money. So Kathy and Nancy, who had been here forever, took it.
Yeah.
So she had her sabbatical, found her new job, didn't have to pay the year back, got $60,000, and got out of Dodge, retired.
Wow.
And went to work for San Francisco Performances and developed a dance performance part. It was really a music place, and she developed the whole dance thing down there. Kathy just retired and started doing her own thing, and I decided, I'll be dang, and I figured out that I hadn't been tenured that long. Actually, I got tenured and I got promoted to full professor, and I think it was Reardon kind of giving me a bone, because at the time I was getting my master's at Reed, because I had finally figured out I needed some kind of degree, and I couldn't go I couldn't, there was nothing here, so I did a MALS, and they promoted me to full, which to this day it's just, thank you, that really helped. And I said, I'm not gonna do it. I can get as much on unemployment than I could for the tenure relinquishment. So I said, I'm not going to quit. You're going to have to cut me. I was the only tenured faculty cut in the state of Oregon. And the union started fighting for me, which I didn't even know. Like, at that point, I was kind of didn't really get the union or anything. And they were great. And they kept finding places for me to go. And we had this horrible dean at the time. It was horrible. Long story. We don't need to go into that. Anyway, I get cut. The program gets cut. We did a series of gala performances. I invited everybody back. We did like several nights of performances to end the department. It was just, I've never been, when they told us that, it's like there's 2 times in my life my knees have actually turned to jelly. And that was when it was like, oh my God, oh my God. And I was of it, and it's like, I am not going to start over again, So I taught that summer, 94, and then I was gone. So fall term, and I was applying for weird jobs like ombudsman. I thought I'd be good at that, and kind of weird things, and not getting anything. And about towards the end of winter term, I get a phone call from the president of the union, and he goes, well, you didn't answer my call. And this is when we had tapes for, and my tape had gotten all screwed up. When your answering machine was a tape thing, and the tapes always got whacked out. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, Craig. My tape machine's just been screwed up. And he said, well, I'm calling because if Portland State was to make an offer to you, would you consider coming back? Now here, my unemployment is just running out. I've had no job offers, and I'm thinking, why not? Why not? He said, I don't know if they'll call. I think you'll have me on a Wednesday. I don't know if they'll call, but there's a couple ideas they have. And I said, okay, thanks. Bye. Friday, the phone rang. Michael Reardon called, and he said, well, we'd like you to come in and talk. We have a couple of ideas. I said, okay. So I came in, and one of them was that Devora Lieberman, who they were starting a new center for teaching and learning, and they wanted Devora to run the learning part, and she was teaching freshman inquiry the first year of the program. And I don't know if you know about the whole gen ed change here, but it was a humongous change. And it was a year-long course with the same group of students to give them a support system to help them understand how to navigate the university. They worked with undergraduate peer mentors to help them understand how to navigate the university and have a community of people they knew. It was a great idea.
Cool.
But she wouldn't leave her students unless someone came in that she okayed.
Okay.
So I went out and it was, the course was Embracing Einstein's Universe, Language, Culture, and Relativity.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, I know, and so I went out to, we got it. She was great. She's president of Laverne University now.
Oh, wow.
She was just great, and so we said, yeah, and they said a couple ideas, but that one, and they said, okay, you'll come in spring term and teach freshman inquiry. It's not a full load, but you have to ramp up. We understand, so that's all we'll do, but we think we want to start a high school program, and would you be interested in that? I would have said yes to anything.
Wow.
Said, sure. Sure. So they brought me back, and I had the same rank, so I was full professor, but not tenure yet. And the union said, Craig said, just hang in there, we'll fight for tenure later, get your tenure back. But he said, find a niche and make yourself indispensable.
Huh.
I said, okay, so I did.
Wow.
And I ended up, it was great because university studies, like, it was nirvana. It was like faculty working collaboratively to teach interdisciplinarily. It was active learning. It was being close to your students. Everything we'd done in dance. Like, it was really weird for the faculty. I couldn't understand because I'd never been in a real department.
Oh.
They aren't the same.
Right.
Dance people are always with their students. We rehearse, we dance with them, we know everything. But we're getting off tabs. Anyway.
No, it's okay. I'm just checking to make sure that we still have battery and space and all that right stuff. So in spring term of 1995, I was back, and I developed a high school program. We taught freshman inquiry with high schools, and I brought in, like, I was dance. So I had taken this decadence class at Reed that was about in the same time period of Einstein and kind of an aesthetic thing, and I brought that, and I had done some other courses that were really helpful, thank the Lord. Wow.
I had to learn relativity, I had to learn how to do the Lorentz transformation. I mean, it was really a great time.
But your role was dance.
Well, dance in this general education program.
Uh-huh. So how did you apply dance in general education?
Not very well, like more theoretically, like the art of the time period, which was when modern art developed, which was my favorite thing in the world. And we would do some movement things, like chance operations things, like that.
So you brought kind of the relativity.
Exactly,
Cool.
which was very similar. And started learning about teaching and learning and how people really learn. It kind of went a whole different direction and ended up directing university studies for 6 years.
Okay.
And then
there's your niche, and you're indispensable.
Right. I mean, I was head of the Freshman Inquiry Council. I just did everything anybody didn't want to do, and became program director, and it was great. So. And then at that point, there's half the faculty never wanted university studies to exist. It was too threatening. It was too, like, you're making me teach outside of my area of discipline. I don't want to. It's time consuming.
It's collaborative, which breaks my pedagogical style.
The whole different pedagogy. We can't lecture, and we've been teaching this way for years, and now you're saying that we're a waste of time, which wasn't ever what anybody meant to do, but a very political bombshell.
Yeah.
We got rid of writing classes. Writing was woven in, math was woven in. Everybody was freaked out.
And threatened if you didn't want to subscribe to that model.
Exactly. So we were always being attacked. People wanted it to go away. So at a point in 2006 or 7, we got attacked again, and part of the attack was to get rid of me because I was considered the guardian of the gate. I wouldn't make the changes they want to be made, which would kind of disintegrate the program. And at that point, so I thought, I could stay and teach university studies, but it was like, well, that would be terrible.
Yeah.
Be on the inside while I watched them dismantle kind of the program or not. Anyway, it was just, and I loved it. I became a national consultant on Gen Ed and learning communities. It was, in electronic portfolios, which I'm still involved in. So I was heavily invested. So it was like, geez. So my boss at the time, who I actually insiders fed me to the lions. But he said, well, Barbara is thinking, would you be interested in being associate dean and, fine and performing arts? And I, sure,
Right.
like anything but stay here. It was just brutal.
Yeah.
So I walked in to meet with Barbara Sestak, who was dean of fine and performing arts at the time, and Sarah Andrews Collier was sitting there, who was head of theater. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And Barbara said, oh, the associate dean, it was assistant. I made her make it associate. The associate dean position is half-time.
Oh.
The other half-time, she said, we're going to be renovating Lincoln Hall, and if we're going to bring dance back, we think we need to make the decision now, so there's space for it. And what do you think? Kind of. And I, this is like 7 years. No, because I was 7, so like 12 years after they cut the dance program. I'm like, not a young chicken, have not danced at all, and I'm going, I can't teach movement classes anymore. I said, that's not going to happen. And Sarah pulled this list. Sarah was really helpful, and she never thought dance should lift, which is kind of funny. But she pulled up these old courses like comp, improv, history, those courses. She said, well, can you teach these? And I said, sure. She said, okay, we have adjuncts teaching movement. I guess we can keep doing that. And with that, well, I went home and I called Bonnie and I called Jan and I said, do you think I can do this? Like, I haven't done anything. And they said, sure. I said, okay. And that brought dance back.
Wow.
Like dance, they said, well, we have to make a minor. So I wrote a minor. The minor came in place the next year, and they said, we're going to have a major. We'll start working on it. Well, they still don't have a major.
Yeah.
And I've written the majors, and and now Terry's literally took the position that I was doing, and they have, it was really different though. It was coming back was really different. But that's how dance got back to Portland State, and now at least it exists. At least it has a program.
A minor. What year was that you were brought on board as associate?
2007.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So this is fascinating. When did the program, the major, disband? What year was
1994.
that? 94. How did you see dance in the whole of Portland change after 94?
Well,
was there an impact that the closure
It was because
had?
we were the center. And the contemporary dance season was the center. I mean, it was kind of the hub. Conduit existed, but it was very small, and it was mostly Mary Osland and I think Linda K. Johnson at the time, and it wasn't what it became.
Right.
But it's just crazy.
I don't quite know what's happening here. This is
either, but it's interesting.
interesting. That's all right. So yeah, what did the closure?
So when the closure was just devastating for everybody. I mean, everybody. People had jobs. They lost their jobs. They got mad at me. It's like I didn't lose the job. And I would save it if I could. So, and the contemporary dance season disappeared. They did one. I think, we phased it out. We had, and the dean said, we had a contract with BB at the time to come back and have a residency, like a month-long residency, make a new work, and he reneged. And she never recovered. I don't blame her. And we said, you can't do that. And he did it. It was awful. It was awful. So it was like there was this hole. I mean, it was like everybody was just stunned and just devastated.
Yeah.
It was devastating. And then Conduit kind of started functioning, more as a place where choreographers could teach and make work. Whitebird started a couple years later.
Yeah.
Whitebird started.
I don't know when it started.
Yeah, me either, but it was not right away. But
but
a couple
a
years.
6-year gap or so, something like that. Yeah.
So it's and PICA always functioned. So there was that.
Right.
That still went on, and OBT was functioning, and so there wasn't any dance. It's just sort of like the heart and center of dance kind of like dropped out.
Right.
Really.
And then left these other organizations that were more peripheral to find a way to
become more central.
Yeah, to be more central and pick up the slack.
Right.
But then it's decentered. There's not like, oh, this is a hub.
Because you could always call here and find things out. You always knew their performances were happening. You could come look for dancers. And there was always like even when I came back to build dance, they said, well, we'll farm out the technique. It's sort of like there isn't like advanced classes going on every 3 days a week all the time. In Portland State, you always knew you could get an advanced technique class. You always knew you could get an intermediate. And often enough that it would make it. You can't take class once a week and develop.
Right.
And there really still isn't that.
Right. Yeah. Because then that's like you were saying, there's so many advantages of a school setting. One of them is like you signed up for this term.
Yeah.
It meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You're going to be here for 2.5 months, 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And then you'll do that several terms in a row.
Right.
And that's
that is really important. And there was always somewhere to perform, and there was always somewhere to make work. Like Lauren Edson took my choreography class, and she just needed a place to make work.
Now I'd like you to conjecture, which is always a dangerous thing because nobody can really determine what things might have been or could have been. But if the dance major had continued, if it had never closed and it continued to build and continued to be funded in the same manner that it was when it existed, how do you think dance in Portland would be different today?
My hope would have been that it would be much more visible and much better funded. Now, mind you, we are one of the few cities with this much dance going on that has never had a full-time salaried modern company, ever. I mean, Portland Dance Theater was for a little while through the CETA or through our work, but not even like OBT. I mean, they at least they're salaried for a certain amount of time. No one. It's been independent choreographers with pickup companies forever.
Right. Northwest Dance Project?
I don't know how they are. They might be a little better. Yeah.
I think, I know for a long time
they weren't.
They weren't, but I think recently Sarah's been able to finagle that arrangement. But it's you're salaried, but at like $25,000 a year or something like that. So it's like you can have an apartment with roommates and eat, and congratulations, now you're going to dance your ass off.
Right. So I think it would be. I would hope that it would be more prevalent, and because it was more prevalent, the audience we had great audiences. Actually, Whitebird does too. Whitebird is a little more conservative in its programming. Right. Although they do bring really interesting work. They're actually growing. They're getting more interesting, I think, their programming. But they're not connected to university. Right. So they don't have that kind of thing, which is really kind of unfortunate. We talk. They use our theater. It's maybe that will develop if they actually support dance here. I don't know. It's hard right now at universities and funding and things, and nothing matters but money. Nothing matters but tuition dollars, and that makes it very hard to establish a new program. You you have to tell us that you're going to have majors that can come and pay, or we aren't even going to bother with you, and that's real hard to do. Well,
you have to have a program for majors to want to go to before. So it's kind of
the apple or the cart or the horse first, and we had made an argument. I did surveys and things, and it looked good. But who knows if they'd actually come? They said they'd come, but I don't know. It's scary. So we really need a big donor. We need a sugar daddy to come in and say, I'll plunk down $5 million, and they've done that in other universities. But then sometimes it comes with a lot of strings, like Southern USC. But that's sort of what's needed right now to really make it happen.
Dancers Workshop, was that a space that you ever worked in, know about?
I did. I took workshops, like they would bring people. They brought David Gordon once, and we would go. I mean, we were friendly, but we were busy. And so we were friendly, but we didn't really interact all that much. If they had something interested, I would go to concerts they did.
Is Dancers Workshop, it was just a space for classes, or it's a name that I've heard come up a lot, but I don't exactly know what their mission was. Like, what did they do?
They were kind of the Reed group. Okay. kind of supported by Judy graduates that stayed here. So it was kind of I don't really know. I mean, I know that I think they taught, they had performances. So I went to when they had guest people, I would go, but I don't know a whole lot about it other than that.
One of those Venn diagrams that just kind of butted up against each other. A little bit of overlap, but not a clear...
And probably, like I'm not good at that kind of thing. Bonnie would know far more, or Greg might know far more, but I can't even remember who was connected to. Josie did concert there. She might know more.
Okay. That's great.
Because Pat Wong was close to Judy, she might remember more.
Excellent.
That might be a good source for that.
Yeah, thank you. And Pat's somebody that I've been meaning to contact to sit down and do this with.
Yeah, she was great. Yeah.
I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yes.
You've certainly solidified a lot of question marks I've had about, what is this, and really wonderful information. Before I shut the camera off, is there anything that seems important or a real highlight or something pivotal in Portland dance that you were a part of that we didn't get a chance to cover?
Well, I think Portland Dance Theater really had a signature kind of choreography it was very movement based, high energy, and had a lot of sense of humor. And I find that missing. I mean, because now it's gone and there's no way to have that didn't pull through. And I kind of miss that, and kind of a merging of like Jan's aesthetic, that merging of theater and dance. Not that it was so emotionally based, but it was maybe character based or relationship based, with kind of a wry wit about it. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think, really beautiful work. I mean, it's like, I think we weren't nobody was the world's best dancer, not technically like people are now, because it's just a really high technical period of time, but we were okay. Mm-hmm. So I wish more of the choreographic influences would have carried through than they have, but I think it kind of ended too soon or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know, you have to have an overlap of ages at a certain point,
right? And
it didn't go long enough, maybe.
Yeah.
It didn't go long enough, but...
Do you know why Cirque dissolved?
Jan moved. Jan moved to New Orleans. And she did some work there. Jan started making clothes. One-of-a-kind hand-painted coats and things made out of vintage fabrics and blankets.
Wow. She did Cirque for a while, and then she lost the contact center. The building got sold or whatever, and she ended up having her own studio on Macadam. Mm-hmm. And she did a lot of solo work there. I did a solo concert there. Mary Osmond did some work there. And she did that at the same time she was doing her clothing. And I think there was a flood. I think she lost a child. And she always felt that her personality would fit better in New Orleans than it did in Portland. And she kind of felt, they went and traveled there and they fell in love and decided to move there. And they opened a store in the French Quarter. It was called Cirque. And Robert made kind of totem art pieces. He was also a really beautiful photographer. And so they sold his art pieces. He made some books that were available online, and she had this store that was her clothing, and she carried other clothing. And so she was gone for a long, long time, and just fairly recently they moved back. The whole hurricane thing happened, and their house was okay. They had a beautiful house in the French Quarter with a pool. It was just gorgeous. They sold the house, and they had lost the store through the hurricane. I mean, it was just too much. And they moved back to Portland. And I think Jan, there were health issues, and she became reclusive, really. And then Robert got ill and passed away, and then Jan passed away. So, and I remember Jan's memorial around here that people showed up.
Really?
I remember, I didn't know at the time who Jan was, but I remember hearing about this, and then this seems significant. Like, this is significant to people.
Yeah. Very sad. Very. loss, the loss of her work is just huge. She was just an amazing visionary choreographer. Just really interesting.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's a good place to wrap up.